Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrea, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. Home theater and AV don't have to be difficult, so we're here to answer your questions on those topics. And
oh, you did good until those topics part. Then it got awkward. Now you cannot put those topics.
Okay.
Because we'll answer. Hey, if you want to ask me how to cook a chicken, I just knocked out some chicken. I just absolutely killed it. It was so good. I mean, I was starving because I didn't eat till 9 p.m. because my life sucks. But no, I'm sorry. My life's okay. I just have children, which if that does not answer the question for you, then you don't have kids. Okay. But I didn't eat till 9 p.m. But I knocked that chicken out of the park. Like every piece had good crispy skin on it, and that is really hard to do. And it came out so good. I had a hard time stopping. So we will also answer your chicken questions.
Okay. I'll add that in there for next time. Not really. Yes, we should apologize to everyone for all the technical glitches we had last week. I don't know what that was. Like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. It looks like things are solved for this week. Let's cross our fingers and knock on wood. Tap, tap, tap. So
yeah, because I ate so late, I'm using the other microphone because I'm going to hook up the other thing. It was too much trouble, and I was already.
I've reset everything in Chrome. I've redone my RegEdit settings. So far, my microphone levels haven't flown all over the place like they did last week. What a pain. So
yeah. So, anyways, so yes, this is AV Rant, the podcast where we answer your AV and home theater and chicken related questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider many things to be chicken, by the way. Anything edible?
Beef is chicken.
Beef is just chicken is just a fast moving vegetable. So that's the way I look at it. I could be a vegetarian as long as you subscribe to that.
I just heard on the news today that apparently there was a shortage on pork that I wasn't aware of, but apparently that's over now. So prices are coming down and everyone's like, yay, bacon is 25% cheaper than it used to be. So get your bacon on. That's what's going on.
I love me some pork. I'm not going to lie.
All right, we started late. We don't have time for this.
It's good. This is going to be the meandering podcast because I ate late and had 2 beers before I ate. So I need time for the food to get in there and mellow me out. All right, AV Rant podcast, AV and home theater questions. To get your questions answered, all you need to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com. If you're uncomfortable with this whole email thing, there is no address that you can send it to physically because that would be weird. Because this is a podcast, so apparently you're all familiar with computers. But you can go to facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. It's all one word. Ask us there. There's lots of stuff going on over there. Posted the picture of myself almost getting beaten up by a sand. What do they call those guys? Sand people. Sand people, right?
Yeah, they're just sand people.
I feel like they should have a name. They have a name.
Oh, they had a different name. Oh, this is horrible. I'm going to lose my geek card.
I know. I'm losing mine, too. I'm the guy who's... Anyways, I was at Disney Studios in Orlando, and that was like a Topps trading card, like a huge one. I just put myself next to it and selfied with that guy. Anyways, you can go to facebook.com where lots of stuff goes on and ask us questions there. You can go to www.avrantpodcast.com. Ask us questions there. That's not
the right address. It's just avrant.com, dude.
What did I say? AV Rant Podcast?
You said AV Rant Podcast. That's the Facebook thing. The Facebook thing has AV
I'm going out of order, and that's what's
already just confusing everybody.
I know.
That's the way it's going to go this week.
Yeah. I guess we could also buy the AV Rant Podcast domain, but why would we? Because it's not like somebody's squatting on that going, oh, we're going to make literally tens of dollars.
Somebody is now.
Have it. I don't care. Anyways, and there's at First Reflect is Rob's Twitter handle, and mine is at AVRant_Tom.
If you were avoiding my Twitter because of all the So You Think You Can Dance videos, it's over. It's aired. It aired yesterday, Monday. It's on the air now. So that's it. No more preview videos. You can come back and view my Twitter.
I did not know that was on. I have not been on Twitter in months. Though I do, if you message me or something, I do get an announcement and I do answer those. So you can still get us that way, or at least me. All right. Let's get into the podcast this week. We always start with our listeners of the week. These are people that have supported the podcast in some way or another. You can support the podcast by going to www.avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and give us a PayPal donation. There has been some suggestions from people that we start a Patreon account, which I am considering and tried to do last week, but could not get the time to do it, which is why the podcast wasn't up till Monday anyways. So I'm slacker all the way around, but I'm thinking about doing that. But I think it's going to be depressing when it sees 2 backers for $3 a month. I think that'll be depressing, but I'll give it a try and see what happens. I don't know, maybe. Anyways, other ways that you can support the podcast is by letting people know that really, be creative. We've had people give us stickers, put stickers on the race cars. We've had people just talk about us to their friends. We've had all sorts of different ways, but one of the common ways is if you buy something and it's because of something recommended, letting the company know often helps. It tends to be the smaller companies that will pay attention to that. The bigger companies, like if you tell Denon that you bought the whatever, they're like, we don't care. We don't care why you bought this.
I still appreciate it. I
do, and you will be a listener of the week if you do that. But I don't think Denon's going to be taking much of those. But SVS does, and Scott bought an SVS PP2000 with the hopes of giving a second one in the not too distant future, and let them know it was because of us. Also, Tim received his SVS PP1000. He's loving it. His theater isn't fully finished yet, but he's already hearing a big difference over the 12-inch Klipsch subwoofer that the PP1000 replaced. He let SVS know about that. And Eric also let SVS know that he bought an SB1000 and another pair of subwoofers for his theater, thanks to AV Rant's recommendations.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention for the folks who got one and have hopes of getting a second one in the future, do talk. Get in touch with SVS directly, because sometimes, I can't promise this on their behalf, but sometimes if it hasn't been that long, they'll still give you the discount for getting duals instead of just one. They're pretty good about that. If it's like within a month, they will often do that. So it's worth just shooting off an email and talking to Ed.
Yeah. Can't hurt. Like somebody once told me, you'll never get anything if you don't ask for it. So, and the worst thing they can say is no, we don't do that.
Exactly.
All right, Alan bit the bullet and bought himself a Denon AVR X4000. He bought it from Accessories for Less and let them know that we recommended them. Again, I'm not sure Accessory for Less really cares, but maybe if you hear it enough.
It's Brian over there. He seems to be slowly becoming aware of us. Enough people have mentioned AV Rant. He's like, I don't know what that is, but cool. So
yeah. So maybe he will learn the Google foo that will lead him to us.
That's right.
And lastly, Infinite Gary was the first person to let us know last week that our YouTube video got set to unlisted again somehow. It happens because we crashed out.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's at some point I got kicked and I came back on. The video itself seems to be the right length. It was like almost 2 hours.
Yeah, so it played through. Right, yeah,
but it was definitely. I think that's why it got unlisted. I fixed it right away. It was very easy to fix. You guys have to let me know. Now, we do have to talk about something. We talk about SVS as a AV Rant community. SVS has approached me. This is not the first time, but they've approached me after enough of you have said, listen, we're buying tons of subwoofers because of these guys, which is helping. Thank you. And because that's sort of the whole point of that was let companies know, and then they will, I don't know, give us money. I don't know. Anyways, they have approached. I don't really think this needs to be a secret in any way, but they approached and just said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in some sort of advertising or some way of something like that?" And the last time they did that, I was like, "Yeah, we would love to. Let me come up with some ways that this would make sense." And I never got back to them because I could never come up with ways that it made sense. I love recommending SVS subwoofers. I love it.
At least right now.
Because it's gonna not only that, it's probably gonna happen in this podcast anyways. Mm-hmm. But the reason I recommend them is because their subwoofers are right now bang for buck, really hard to beat. That may change in the future. Mm-hmm. Somebody may come up with something different. We're going to be talking about some subwoofers this podcast probably, which are very exciting and could very well be the new go-to recommendations from us. And what I don't want to do is I don't want our recommendations to A, be influenced by the fact that we've got advertisers, mm-hmm. or B, have you guys feel like they are influenced because of advertisers. I will tell you right now, I really don't care what, if they're like, oh, we're going to pull our funding, pull it, I don't care. No, we don't, advertising budget's going, I don't care. I don't care. I've been in this business long enough.
This long.
Not only that, but I've been in this business, in the AV business long enough to know that these things come and go, and mm-hmm. you just don't rely on them. So if SVS wants to support the podcast, I'm perfectly happy to put some sort of, this podcast brought to you by SVS Subwoofer, or Something like that. I mean, I don't really know.
Or even do a live read. I mean, that's okay as long as I think it's demarcated and clear that it's an advertisement and, not a off the cuff recommendation. I mean, hopefully, obviously, I think anyone who's been listening to the podcast for any length of time knows that we haven't been recommending them because of any sort of advertising dollars up to this point. But we do get new listeners, every week. And for those people who might be just coming in, they might go, "Oh, these guys are just SVS shills." And
this is exactly what happened over at Audioholics, right? The minute they got a store, even though I can guarantee you 100%. That the store in no way influenced editorial content of Audioholics. I can guarantee you that. The dude who ran the store lives in Miami. I think they talked to him maybe once a week. And in no way did anything that happened over there influence Audioholics editorial. It just absolutely did not happen. But yet, the minute that they got the store, we can't trust them anymore. They're biased.
Yeah.
You guys are a bunch of I just can't say all the words to describe the way that people like that make me feel.
Yeah, the criticisms will almost certainly come.
So I mean, I'm just throwing it out there to the AV Rant community. Answer us on Facebook. Go to the website and comment there on this podcast. Let me know what you think. Or give me suggestions. You can email as well. Give us suggestions on how you think it makes sense that we can get out, not just SVS, any advertisers.
Yeah.
That we can advertise where you don't feel like it's going to infringe upon our opinion. Because I absolutely guarantee you it won't. But that being said, it has to have a perception of it, not influencing.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, we could have, like a bar of soap advertised on there, and then there wouldn't be any conflict because we don't recommend soap. But that probably isn't what's going to happen. It's probably going to be a company that we actually talk about. So
I guarantee you, if I go through this conversation with the SVS, the first thing I'm going to say is, listen, I would very much like to have you guys as advertisers, but I'm telling you right now, I am not going to, my recommendations are 100% going to be based on what's the best out there right now. And if it's you, well, then great. If it's not, well, then I won't be talking about you very much. And more importantly, what's the best for the person? Because we get a lot of people in here who occasionally need massive amounts of output for massive rooms. And SVS, frankly, isn't always the best solution for them because their massive output subwoofers tend to be a lot more expensive than some of the just bigger subs.
Yeah, that's why we talk about HSU and Rhythmic and Power Sound Audio, and we'll probably be adding in what's that new one? Reaction Audio. They might be getting added in there. Audioholics just talked about them. I haven't heard them in person, so I'm not going to recommend them yet. But
that being said, they have talked about maybe getting some more interviews from SVS staff on the podcast, which I would love to do, regardless of whether or not any advertising happens. So you can look forward to hopefully something like that happen. But I do want to get feedback from the AV Rant community. You guys who are listeners, that are longtime listeners, I know you trust us. That's not an issue. I'm really thinking about the people who just pop in for one episode and go, wait a second, they have an SVS ad and they just suggested SVS.
Right. Yeah.
What does that do? Because frankly, it's no good me trying to sell them clicks on our, or banners or something like that. Because frankly, the website doesn't get that much traffic. And it's not really meant to. It's just meant to be a place where all those crawlers can go and grab the podcast feed and put it onto their websites.
Yeah, and I don't want to have to give a disclaimer every time we recommend an SVS sub to someone and say, oh, disclaimer, we are, supported by them as an advertiser. And that would get tedious after a very short amount of time.
It would. And like I said, I mean, I know, and I think that most of our listeners would know that it's not going to affect us. It's not going to affect me. That's for sure. Because like I said, they could pull if there was advertising, they could pull it right away. And I wouldn't really want to care. But I feel like we're missing an opportunity here as a podcast to grow. Yeah. At the same time, we're missing maybe we're, this could be the next step towards the next level of AV Rant. And I don't want to mess up while we're doing this. Therefore, I am soliciting opinions and ideas from our community. So whatever you guys can come up with in the next week, I'm going to let the SVS guy know that we talked about this in the podcast, and we'll just see what happens. Because I really don't want to keep ignoring him, because that's what I've been doing. I feel really bad because it's really not purposeful. It's just like literally I had an email that I wrote to him like, maybe we could do this, and I thought about it, like, nah, it doesn't work. Maybe we could do this. I kept rewriting it. Finally, I was just like, it's been like 3 weeks, dude. He doesn't expect to hear from you again. Delete. So, I really felt bad about that. I did, because I don't like doing it to people, but I just literally could not come up with a good idea that wasn't going to compromise the integrity of the show. That said, we are not earning so much money from Rob's certainly not looking into buying his first house. Let's start with that.
Not from that kind of funding, no.
Yeah, so we're not looking. The donations aren't exactly making a huge dent in my mortgage payments, or any dent, or even so much of a.
But it is keeping the podcast going without it costing money out of pocket, which is that's huge. In my opinion, that's huge.
At this point, we are not out of pocket week to week, month to month. I am still way in the red as far as how much money I've spent in this podcast the last 8 years. There's no way I have caught up in any way, shape, or form, which is fine. I am not complaining about that. I never have. But that's just a fact. So I would very much like to maybe see the podcast go to the next level, and let's just talk about it. So get back to us, guys and gals. I would love to hear your opinions. Now, news items. Yeah, all right. So there's a first DTS X Blu-ray release has been announced. It's Ex Machina from Lionsgate on July 14th.
Yep.
And it very much looks like that DTS X and Dolby Atmos, is it going to be an either or situation, or you have to have two different things or whatever?
As far as I can tell, it's going to be the same situation we've had since regular Dolby Digital and DTS, Dolby True HD and DTS HD Master Audio. Some discs have one or the other. Usually one format is more popular than the other, but nevertheless, both are being used, which means you have to have both decoders in your AV receiver, which is what we've had all along. I am not seeing Oro 3D catching on whatsoever, so I think we're sticking with the two big boys, and there it is. If you want immersive audio, best that you get both decoders, because yes, there will be releases in both formats. That's about it. There's already a schedule for the next 3 Dolby Atmos titles coming out through the end of July. So yes, both formats are being supported. That's just the way it's going to go.
Yay. All right. ELAC, ELAC is a German speaker company over at The Show, THE Show, The High End, which is what THE stands for, Show. They released a couple subwoofers. So, yeah, is it 2 or 3 subwoofers?
Well, 3, but 2 of them are interesting.
Yeah, one of them is just a normal old sub that looks pretty much like every other cheapo sub that comes off of. I mean,
$249 though, a little 10-inch sub for $249. That ain't bad.
Yeah, the front firing port and stuff like that. So, but the cool thing was that these are all designed by Andrew Jones. He has parted ways with Pioneer and TAD, TAD. He's now designing these speakers for ELAC. I guess ELAC America. The first,
because the ELAC was in North America a long time ago, and then they left and were pretty much exclusive in Europe, and now they're coming back. So they have a whole division, ELAC America, that will be focusing in North America, and Andrew Jones is their head designer for that particular branch.
So we got this scoop from Ray Coronado, our calibrator. I always want to call him custom installer. He's not. He's a calibrator.
He's a calibrator.
But he gave us the heads up on this. There's a couple bookshelves, $229 a pair and $279 a pair. One tower, $279 each. Center for a $179 and an Atmos module, because why not? $229 a pair, and 3 subwoofers, which are $250, $500, and $700. The $250 is just the 10-inch downward firing sub with a front port. The other 2 are a little bit more interesting. I think it's a 10 with a 10-inch passive radiator. Forward firing 10 with a 10-inch passive radiator, which is down firing. The other one, I think it's a 12, right? It's a 12.
That's correct. Yep.
12-inch down firing passive radiator. The thing is, there's no controls. You plug them in, and you plug in the little cable, whatever, and they're all Bluetooth controlled. So you use the low energy, the LE Bluetooth version, and you connect to them, and then you can do you can set the levels and everything like that, which is whatever. But the cool thing is that you can calibrate the subs with your device. Oh, you can't do that because the microphones suck. Yes, they do. So what you do is you go and you hold your device within a foot of the sub, because they know what the near field response is of the sub, and that calibrates not the microphone, but calibrates their measurement through that microphone, taking into account what they know the response should be, and then you bring it back to your seat, run the test again, and it calibrates your sub for that seat, which is better than nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I'm not entirely sure I would call this like a super high end feature because from what I could see, because they Andrew Robinson actually put up a video on his YouTube page. We can have a link for that over at avrant.com. He mentions Ray Coronado because Ray got in touch with him too. Because Ray was the guy who was at the show and shot a video where they explained how all this works and actually demonstrated it. It looks as though it basically does a 1/6 octave measurement because they mentioned taking like 16 tones.
Yeah.
So it's roughly a 1/6 octave measurement, which is kind of coarse, and it's not a sweep. It's just individual tones that are played. And this whole thing of just holding your device rather than having it, I guess you could put it on top of a stand so that your body isn't in the way and all that. I suppose you could, but the idea is that you're pretty much just holding it. So little bit hinky there, although in the base, it doesn't matter as much. We always talk about when you're running your room correction, make sure you use a tripod to hold the microphone and have it pointing straight up. On the base, it's a little less important because those frequencies are so long and they're wrapping around everything that they meet. So it's not as directional. When you're doing room correction, you're measuring the high frequencies too. And those are easily disrupted by your body being there. Whereas the low frequencies, they're not affected as much. So, this is kind of like, it's kind of cool. I'm not sure this is like super high end, but yeah, it's better than
I mean, it's only a $500 and $700 subs.
Exactly.
I mean, they're cheap. It's fairly cheap.
I don't know what you're going to do if you don't have an iOS or Android device.
Well, not only that, I have an Android device that doesn't have Atmo, the LE Bluetooth.
Ah, yeah.
And I mean, mine's a Samsung Galaxy Nexus, or they call it something else over here. But that's when I bought it overseas, that's what it was called. And it's the one after the one, the Nexus One. It was the next one that came out, I think is what it is. And it has the technology, it has all the parts to be LE, but they didn't get the upgrade and it didn't get tested because they broke with Texas Instruments or something like that. They stopped using them, so they didn't have stuff to test. So I got stuck before Jelly Bean, whatever's before Jelly Bean.
Okay.
Whatever that is, I don't know. So therefore, I cannot do the LE stuff, which is because you can still connect by Bluetooth, but you got to be close. You have to be really close because it's low energy. You have to be really close. So I could do the 1 foot measurement, but by the time I got back to my seat, I almost guarantee it wouldn't work. Like it's like arm's length. That's how close you have to be. So there's definitely some. I mean, it's cool, but you're right. If you don't have that device, this sub is dead.
What if you're Josh or you're Austin and you have a Windows Phone device?
Those are the only two people that have a Windows Phone.
I know. These subs weren't built for them.
No, those two people, okay, they'll be okay.
I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't poke fun.
Yes, okay. But it is a pretty interesting thing, and I do like it because, frankly, I feel like these subs would be for people who aren't going to be buying their higher end receivers that will have decent room calibration on it.
Yeah,
so
it could be.
This is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And with you think about it, so $230 a pair, so you're looking at $460 plus a $180 sub center channel, right? So I mean, it's $500 for the $600 for the speakers, $500 for the sub. Yeah, they're not like that's $1,000. They're not exactly dropping.
Yeah, this is I mean the whole series as a whole is called the Debut series. Somehow they trademarked that. I don't know how you trademark the word debut, but there it is.
Maybe,
but it's an interesting price point that they're coming in because these are more expensive than the Pioneer speakers that he designed, but less expensive than the Pioneer Elite speakers that he designed. And these are less expensive than like even say SVS's Prime series speakers, So he's hitting this real middle ground where I don't see a ton of speakers actually priced right here in this range, like around $550 for a pair of towers. Like you don't see that a ton. So they hit a market that Ray was really impressed with their sound. Obviously, it's in a show room. It's it's in a hotel room, so can't be too critical. But he was really impressed with them. So
so we'll see what happens with these. We'll hopefully get
something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, get our ears on them. Like I said, I can't use the sub because I don't have the right device for it. My son's Samsung Actually, I think the Nexus 7 has it. So my other son has a Nexus 7. So maybe I could use it with that. Yeah, to find the device.
And these are going to be sold internet direct, by the way, directly on ELAC's North American website. So
yeah, we're gonna have to see if we can get a review sample of those. Yeah. All right. So let's start in from questions from last week. Nikhil. Anyways, asked if putting subwoofers across the room from one another works because they act as active bass traps for one another, would it also be beneficial to put subwoofers on the ceiling? Aren't there standing waves in the vertical direction as well? I swear I tried to find that stupid white paper that
the 3 subwoofer solution where there was one that was elevated.
Yeah, I could not find it. I spent far too much time looking for this stupid answer, and I ended up I was running late today anyways. I shouldn't have been spending much time on it, so everybody else got left in the dust. So my remembering is that it really didn't matter putting it up or down. Like the vertical didn't make that much difference, but I'm just remembering that. So why don't you fill us in, Rob?
Yeah, well, it was funny because Nikhil's wording in his email led me to believe this was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But the honest answer is yes, there are standing waves in the vertical direction. They are, for sure. Yeah, that does happen. And yes, actually, putting subwoofers on your ceiling across, directly above your other subs would take care of that. However, the reason isn't hugely important is because we're rarely moving up and down while we watch. I guess you could. I guess some people like to lie down and then sit up and then maybe stand up for whatever reason. But
because they're doing yoga while they're watching TV, is that what you think is happening?
Lee was saying sometimes he likes to slide down in front of his couch.
Lee is a freak. We have all learned that last week for the after party. Lee has got issues, large issues that he's addressed by psychologists. He is a case study waiting to happen. And yes, sir, tell your wife I said that. Go on.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, in general, if you're sitting more or less in the same position, which is what most people do, then you won't notice it. I mean, we do tend to move from side to side a little bit or cock our head a little bit from side to side just to adjust ourselves in the seat. So, and certainly the main reason why having subwoofers across each other, both of them sitting on the floor, as you would expect, makes sense is because of multiple seats. You will very often have someone sitting next to you, and they will be in a different position for the peaks and nulls in the room if you were only using one subwoofer, whereas they're probably not drastically taller or shorter than you when sitting down. So yeah.
If you even think about recliners, your head's only about a foot difference, when you recline. So that's the way my first initial thought when I read the question was, yeah, I mean, technically it does make a difference because there are those standing waves, but you're near the ground and the subwoofers are near the ground. Therefore,
yeah, it's a matter of practicality, which is you could do this, but obviously installing subwoofers somehow towards your ceiling, whether that's box subwoofers you would somehow have to suspend, or
that would be awesome.
Put a giant, very sturdy shelf on your wall, something like that, or putting like in wall subs way up high or in the ceiling. Like the cost and problem of doing that doesn't give you enough benefit because you're not moving vertically enough for that to be worthwhile. That's where it comes in. But strictly speaking, there are standing waves vertically, so yeah, you
standing waves in all 3 directions. So
it's a cost benefit thing.
Nicholas also has a subwoofer related question. He's setting up his theater in a rectangular basement room and has positioned his 2 subwoofers in diagonally opposite corners. Yay!
Okay.
Yeah, so far so good. He was wondering if he should also still install passive bass traps in all 4 corners. I would definitely do it in 2, the 2 that don't have subwoofers in them. But the ones that have subwoofers in it, I don't really see why you would need to. He's wondering if he should still install passive bass traps in all 4 corners, maybe leave the corners where the subwoofers are placed bare. And he also wants to know if a subwoofer in every corner is actually optimal. Technically, optimal is midpoints of the walls.
Midpoints of all 4 walls. Well, optimal in the sense that midpoints of all 4 walls will get you the most uniform bass across all of your seats that you can get. But subs in all 4 corners gets darn close and actually gets you more output. So the benefit there, because he's saying, obviously it's more expensive to have 4 subwoofers than 2, but if you put 4 subwoofers in corners, you do get a boundary gain for all 4 of those subs, which means theoretically you could use maybe a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit less expensive that don't play as loud. If you put them out in a wide open field, they don't play as loud.
Right.
The counterintuitive thing of having 4 subs at the midpoints of all 4 walls is that the bass actually gets quieter. Like, it's kind of crazy to think, how can putting 4 subs in a room make the bass quieter? But it does, because there's so much sound wave cancellation in every direction that it actually makes it quieter. So then you need bigger, more powerful subs. So yeah, that's sort of the trade-off you're making there.
Yeah. So remember, we're talking about the bass is even across the seats. So when you say, is it going to sound the best? Will it sound a lot better? Well, it'll sound a lot more even. It'll sound the same in one seat from one seat to the next. Still might have problems. You still might have some sort of hump or dip or something going on there, but it's going to sound the same in every single seat. What does that mean for you? That means your receiver, which has your room correction, which is going to apply some sort of filter to it, is going to be able to go, he took like 8 measurements and it's all the same.
Yep.
They're all the same. So all I have to do is this. I don't have to try to figure out what I can do to make, to try to fix this without hurting that, and try to adjust this without making things weird on this other seat. It's just the same thing will fix all the seats. So that's what you're really going for here. And therefore, will it sound a lot better? In the end, it will. And it'll sound better for everybody.
If you're sitting somewhere other than the prime seat.
Yes.
But if it's only ever you, Niklas, and you're only care about one seat, then not really. You're not going to be sitting there with 4 subs in 4 corners going, oh, in my prime seat, this sounds drastically different and better. Because that isn't really the case.
Right. Yeah. I think that you really need the 2 subs, just, and no matter how many people are in your room. Technically, you can get away with 1 that there's just you and nobody else, but I feel like you're still really having to do a lot of EQ weirdness in order to make it sound as good as it can. I've never gotten as good sound with 1 sub, no matter crawling for bass, all that other nonsense. Never gotten as good sound with 1 sub as I have with 2.
Yeah,
that's just my experience.
Me too.
But technically, yes, you should be able to get, if you're really, really dedicated to this whole thing, you should be able to get just as good a sound with 1 sub. I think you need the 2. I think the 4 is really if you've got a big theater and a lot of seats and you want everybody to be happy.
Yep.
And I mean, frankly, with my house, dude, I would never need that, because my wife's like, and my kids, give me a break. They have no idea what's going on. It's completely wasted on them. Little miscreants.
So as for the passive bass traps,
oh yeah, I forgot about those.
Yeah, the theory on it, I mean, Gene is actually talking about this on Audioholics fairly frequently now, which is that if you do have 2 or 4 subs and you've placed them optimally like this across the room from one another, then for the very low frequencies that those subwoofers are producing, you don't really need passive bass traps, because they are acting as active bass traps for one another. But there's a little bit more to it, because passive bass traps, the regular ones that are like 4 or 6 inches thick that you straddle the corner, or maybe you get the wedges that actually fit right into the corner, they don't actually attenuate a whole lot of bass below 80 hertz. You're lucky if you're getting much below 80 hertz. They're really quite effective for the whole range from about 80 hertz to up to around 500 hertz, which means they're going well into the range where your speakers are playing, not the subwoofers. And once it's the speakers that are, your speakers are producing like the 200 hertz bass, and 200 hertz is still bass. It's not deep bass, but it's definitely still bass. And almost all of that is just coming from the speaker. And that's one speaker. You don't have another speaker across the room from it acting as an active bass trap for that. So when it comes to the passive bass traps, I still say it's not a bad idea at all to have them in all 4 corners. It's not a bad idea to have bass trapping in every edge of the room if you can somehow fit it in there, because you can almost never have too much bass trapping. That's just sort of the way it goes, and because your subs aren't handling all the bass all the way up to 500 hertz. So that's where I stand on that.
Doing that, because it's not just absorbing bass; it's going to absorb a lot of stuff too. So you can make your. I mean, I don't know that I would agree that you could put them in every single place where corners meet. that's overkill. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I've never had 4 subs, so if I did, I imagine I would probably go the midpoint of the wall route if I had the option. But yeah, definitely in those other two corners, I would put some bass drops in it. In all four corners, I think would be fine. I don't know if you need them near the ceiling.
Yeah, I think it's the difference of, some people you can definitely overdamp a room in the high and the mid frequencies. It's really hard to overdamp a small room, and pretty much any room in a regular size house is going to be considered a small room as far as acoustics go. It's hard to overdamp it in the bass. Yeah. So if you're worried that it's just going to be too much damping, that isn't really the case. And it will be affecting more frequencies than just what the subwoofers are producing.
Your volume's going all over the place again.
I know it is. I thought I had it fixed. It's
do not log out again, because we're not dealing. I'm not dealing with that editing nightmare that was last week. All right, Alan, enjoy our list of front projectors that we posted on avrant.com. It also got posted on Facebook. He bought a refurbished Epson 5030 UB, and he's loving it. He wanted to ask if it's normal for the lens shift to feel a bit spongy, though. He says that when he adjusts the vertical lens shift, it moves the horizontal lens shift a little and vice versa. So it's a slightly frustrating game of fiddling back and forth just to get it right, although he says it's a small price to pay for having so much leeway, and it really only needs to be set once. Dude, mine is exactly the same way. It is not even, it is like, you're just going back and forth with this thing, and you get it just perfect. Like, nobody touch it! And every time I have to go up there and like, because there's a vent at the bottom, and there's a little sponge-like filter, for the air intake. And whenever I have to get down underneath that thing and take that out and then clean it, because every once in a while it gets hot and needs to be cleaned, I'm always like, oh, I gotta mess with the lens shift again. Dang it. So no, dude, that's totally normal. At least in this experience.
Even the motorized ones that have nice little worm gears, and you click them, on the remote, and it goes step by step. Even those, you tend to get a little, if you move the vertical quite a bit, you tend to get a little nudge in the horizontal. So yeah, you're not alone, but yeah, hopefully you're only having to do it once.
Yeah, or every once in a while, like me. He also smiled at Rob's suggestion of using NHT's foam blocking solution for in-wall speakers. He smiled because he had already made his own foam blocking solution just by using cheap foam pipe insulation that he taped together until it wedged into his wall cavity. He also stuffed lots of acoustic stuff. All right, batting from Parts Express into the cavity. All this was for surround speakers, which are the Mica M8 in-wall speakers they bought on Amazon for $150 a pop. He gives them a thumbs up and says they are a bit brighter than his Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers, but mounted 2.5 feet above seated ear level, they match quite well, and he's very happy with the end result. So there you go, DIY. I've used that pipe installation stuff too. You can do that. You know what? I also thought, if you just have them lying around and you're not really using them for anything, you could use those those little noodles for the pool. Those work.
Yeah,
because those are solid at least most of the time. Though, they're a little bit thicker too. Anyways, with this mention of retrofitting in-wall speakers, Rob wanted to mention the product from Dynamat. Why don't you mention the product from Dynamat instead of having me read it?
Sure, yeah, it's called the Dynabox. I was looking into in-ceiling speakers because I'm like, Dolby Atmos, DTS-X, I'm going to need in-ceiling speakers at some point. But
your definition of need and my definition of need are not the same.
Yes, but some of the ones that I'm most interested in do not come with backer boxes pre-installed. And of course, you can always construct backer boxes, but sometimes that's a little more time and effort than you really want to put in. So Dynamat does have their Dynabox. It's a flexible sort of extruded rubber type of thing. You can actually sort of roll it up and retrofit it into the hole that you've cut into your ceiling, and then expand it above the ceiling, and then put in all the sound blocking insulation that they also give to you. So it's kind of a neat solution. I like it. From everyone who's used it over on AVS Forum and other forums and that, they say it's very effective. It definitely blocks the sound, which I totally believe, because that's pretty much what Dynamat does, is just produce things that try to block sound. So seems effective, but it's a little pricey, $170 for each box, which is not cheap. You can definitely construct your own backer box for less money than that. So this is a convenience and effectiveness over price type of thing.
Yeah. No, there you go.
Check it out if you want.
All right, Barney, over at AVS Forum, Barney saw a calibrator, I guess a custom calibrator guy or gal, post. Quote, there is no ignoring minor alignment issues with 3-chip projection technologies of LCD, LCOS, and DLP, all of which blur the image slightly, end quote. Barney's neighbor has an LED light source DLP projector, and to Barney's eyes, the image is extremely sharp and stable. Could we please elaborate? If I was a custom installer, I would say that. That's my elaboration.
Well, I mean,
technically it's true, okay, but it comes down to technically it's true, but I don't know that I've ever heard, like in my THX calibration class, no one ever mentioned that you needed to deal with the fact that there was 3 different chips or 3 different whatever it is in these solutions, and that was going to somehow blur the image. I've never heard that.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on here is that the white light that's coming out of the lamp, and this is if you're using a traditional lamp, which the vast majority of projectors still do, that white light that comes out gets separated into red, green, and blue, and then red, green, and blue are shined onto an individual little chip, be that an LCD chip or a liquid crystalline silicon chip or a DLP chip. And then all of those are overlapping on top of each other, and that's how you get your final image. So yes, you have 3 separate sources of light overlapping on one another, and if they aren't perfectly aligned, then you could, I mean, sometimes if you get really up close to the point that you can see individual pixels on your screen, you might notice that to the very, very far right of each and every pixel, there's a little sliver of red, and on the other very, very far left, there's a little sliver of blue, and that's because the panels aren't perfectly aligned. Will you see that as actual blurring? Pretty unlikely.
Yeah, that's kind of, this is just sort of one of those.
I mean, every projector in every movie theater out there right now is a 3-chip projector. In fact, very often it's 2 projectors. Let alone 3 chips, it's 2 projectors with 6 chips, and those are lighting up, and rarely do you go into the movie theater and go, ooh, that looks really blurry. And that's blowing up way larger than the projection image you're going to have in your own home. So I don't worry too much about this. As for the one that Barney saw at his neighbor's house, a lot of DLP projectors actually do only use 1 chip. They don't use 3.
Yeah.
And instead of separating the light into red, green, and blue and shining it onto 3 separate chips, they just sequence the light, which you can do with an LED light source. If you're using a lamp, you use a color wheel that spins red, green, and blue filters in front of the lamp so that it goes red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red, green, blue onto the single chip. If you have LEDs, then you can just flash red, green, blue LEDs or lasers. So that's very possibly what's going on there. It's one reason why some people go, oh, I like single chip DLP better than any others because it doesn't have 3 chips to misalign. But then,
yeah, they like them in theory. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to. And we got 3 chips because we were tired of the, not screen door, the what was the DLP one? The rainbow effect.
Yeah,
which was some people were, and that was because of the, then they started talking about six color wheels, 6 color wheels and stuff like that in order to eliminate that. Just stop worrying about stuff that you don't actually see. Don't come to me and say I'm worried that my car might break down. I am a mechanic. I can fix cars. I cannot fix your concern about your car maybe breaking down in the future because of something you read on the forum. Or because of something that makes sense to you. Well, wheels, they touch the ground a lot. And I think that if we only had 1, then we could make a bigger one and it would be better because then, shut up. Shut up. I'm not talking about him in particular. I'm talking about this stupid calibrator guy.
Yeah, the truth is when it comes to the sharpness or blurriness of the image, our eyes are looking at the black and white content. They're not looking at the color content. We don't use individual red or individual blue or individual green to judge the sharpness of an image. We use the black and white. So the vast majority of each pixel, even if those 3 chips are slightly misaligned, the vast majority of each pixel is still, when it's producing black or white, is all 3 of those chips active over that whole area. And that's what we're looking at. If there's a little bit of red off to the right, a little bit of blue off to the left of each pixel, our eye does not pick that up very well at all. Yeah. So maybe this is someone who sits 4 feet away from an 80-inch image and they can see each pixel and they go, oh, I can see a little red to the right of each pixel. And, so, yeah.
like if your custom calibrator has to call you up to the front and say, you see how it's a little bit misaligned? You have my permission to knee them in the groin.
Get within a meter and then put on these binoculars and look, darn it.
Darn it, it's misaligned. It's not perfect. It's blurry. It's not blurry. Shut up. Ashley on Facebook wanted to clarify about his tint settings from a few weeks ago. His display is a Sony PS3D display, which is kind of cool because you can wear glasses and play the same game full screen. Use the 3D instead of doing one eye to left eye or right eye. You can put, all of one screen into one person's glasses and all of a different screen into the other person's glasses. You can play the same game at the same time. Yep. Full screen.
It's real. It's real split screen. It's splitting the screen in twain.
Yes, it's awesome. Person. So if you understand that, then go look up Sony PlayStation 3D display. Okay. Anyways, and his Blu-ray player is a PS3. He always sets the display to cinema picture mode and only offers cool, standard, and warm for the color temperature. When he has selected, of course, warm. So with that being the case, any further thoughts about him getting a +6 tint display setting using the Disney Wow setup disc, and also getting a 0 tint setting using the THX setup app via AirPlay? Didn't he solve this problem though by doing something? Wasn't there this already?
Well, there was when he wasn't doing it via AirPlay. Then the THX setup app was, if he just went by eye and adjusted it, he was getting +6 on that as well. So I still
doesn't it just say that the AirPlay is the problem here?
It's very, very possible that this display, I mean, I know the PS3D display, it's certainly not the most expensive display ever made, and it's possible that the colors aren't super duper accurate. So when you're looking at the test pattern and they're saying adjust your tint, based on this test pattern, then yeah, maybe the colors are a little bit off, so you're ending up with +6. I'm still just like, tint should not have to be that high. I'm of the opinion of I'd pretty much just ignore it. I just ignore it. I maybe set it to +2 or +3 if you just feel like you need to adjust it. But tint just isn't the setting I'd be fiddling with. I gotta tell you, that's how I feel about it. Sorry, Ashley.
All right. You know what I feel like with your voice getting louder and softer? You probably as Canadian, Second City Television, SCTV.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, remember there was the guy who had the TV, the 3D guy. Ooh, spooky. We do this whole thing, right? We go back and forth with whatever this. It's what it feels like you're doing, but with your voice. All right. Anyways,
cool.
So Ashley, I don't know, dude. Walk it off. That's pretty much what we got.
We are so helpful on that one.
We are not helpful because honestly, without being able to see your TV and see it yourself, I don't know. Maybe your eyes are messed up. I don't know. I mean, honestly, maybe you like it to be reddish or like it to be, bluish or something like that.
No, I'm guessing the tint on that particular TV probably is a little bit off. It's probably a little bit inaccurate because the PS3 is not the problem. That's a perfectly good Blu-ray player that doesn't mess with the signal. So if that's what's happening off of a calibration disc coming off the PS3, then it's probably not entirely wrong, but it's just, yeah, tint is just not the setting to be messing around with. So, yeah. I'm just repeating myself.
You are. Kevin has a Rant SR6005, which offers multi-Q, Odyssey multi-Q. It does have 2 subwoofer outputs, but they are not independent. Would upgrading his receiver to one that offers Odyssey sub-EQ HT make a big difference? Well, it'd make a big difference in that the sub-EQ HT individually sets distances and levels for each sub.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think it was actually this question. I think there's another one coming up later asking a similar sort of thing about this. And, one of the things I sort of pride ourselves about this podcast is that we don't just form one opinion or one set of advice and then steadfastly hold to it no matter what new information says. There's enough evidence that setting different distances for the 2 subs, even if they are physically 2 different distances away from you, there's enough evidence now that isn't really a good thing. That even if they are physically 2 different distances away from you, you still actually kind of want to set them both to the same distance because they are working in tandem and they are working as active bass traps for one another as long as they're across the room from one another. So I'm kind of starting to lean towards not doing sub-EQ HT, to be honest.
Well, the sub-EQ HT as well, though, also does a lot more EQ in the sub range and the sub-EQ HT has higher resolution fur filters than the regular multi-EQ.
Well, that's actually just part of multi-EQ XT32 though. That's not.
Yeah, but that's not what he has with the
right
6005. Well, my point is that he's asking if it because of the non-independent, but the answer to his question is, will multi-EQ XT32 with sub EQ HT make a big difference? Yes, but not because the outputs are independent. It's because of all the other features that it offers on top of what multi-EQ has.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of models, particularly from Onkyo, before they dropped Odyssey altogether, that had multi-EQ XT32, but did not have sub EQ HT.
Yeah.
And that was fine. You could run, the two subwoofers in mono, meaning they share a distance measurement. And that worked just fine. So, yeah, I mean, even though we've talked about using sub-EQ HT and liking it because it makes setting up dual subwoofers automated and easy, I'm now starting to come around. I mean, in my own setup, physically, they're the same distance from my primary seat, and so they end up being the same volume level and the same distance regardless. I haven't experimented enough firsthand.
In most rooms, it's really not going to make that much difference.
Exactly, because it's not tremendously different.
I think my difference is maybe 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2.5 feet. And in a bass wave, that's just not that big of a difference. Frankly, it's yes, exactly. It's really not going to make a huge difference. So having independent is not going to make your bass experience better. Having higher resolution fur filters, having Odyssey that goes all the way down and does some bass EQing, that's going to make the difference here. So the answer to your question is yes, but not for the reasons that you thought.
Or the reasons that we even said ourselves on this podcast not that long ago. So the thing is, I'm not 100% either way now, because I haven't done enough experimentation on my own to really nail down.
It doesn't really matter though, because that's the thing. It doesn't really matter because unless you were talking like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 feet difference here, frankly, it might as well be the same.
Yeah, because like one click on your volume dial and 2 milliseconds of delay, it's not going to make a big difference to a 20 hertz wave.
No,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
So second, he has a Samsung plasma TV, and he has adjusted the picture using the Spears and Munsell disc. Would it be worth it for him to hire a professional calibrator? And if so, where can you find one? Well, are you not happy with your picture? Let's just start with that.
Well, I'd come at it a little differently.
Well, no, let's start there. Are you thinking that your picture could look better? And how much is it worth to you to make sure that you get the best possible picture quality? Because you're going to spend 3 bones, maybe $300.
No, probably more. It's usually about $400.
Isn't it that much now?
Yeah, $350, $400 is pretty common.
So you're going to spend a chunk of change getting this professional calibrator in there. So if they come in and they go, looks pretty good. I did this, did that, and you can sit there and watch them and that sort of stuff. If they don't do that much, and afterwards you're like, well, I guess it looks better. It kind of looks darker than it was before, which is almost certainly what's going to happen. But because they always turn down the brightness because you always have it too bright.
It's true.
But you're gonna. I don't know. Would it be worth it? I can't tell you that. That being said, we can help you find one.
Yeah, my opinion is that if you've never ever seen a fully professionally calibrated display, it's worth doing it once. That's my personal opinion, just to have that frame of reference. But that said, it's pretty well known that the Samsung, his is a PN F8500 series plasma. It's pretty well known that out of the box, as long as you put those in, is they're called theater mode, theater, movie, cinema, one of those words.
I think it's cinema. I don't think it's theater.
Whatever the word is. Theater, cinema, or movie, whatever the word they choose. If you put it in that mode and set it to the warm to color temperature,
you're really close, dude.
They're very close. They're very close. And then if you use a setup disc like the Spears and Munsell to set your contrast and brightness, because those are definitely room dependent. You can't set contrast and brightness at a factory. Those depend on the lighting in your room. But as long as you set those, you're really not drastically far off. Like you really, really aren't.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, this is a bit of a judgment call. Myself, I'm glad that I have seen one truly professional calibration, so that I know what that looks like, and now I have that as a basis of comparison. And I have to be honest, as fanatic as I am about accuracy and stuff, I have never had another professional calibration of a display done. I've just used that original one as my frame of reference, and I am saying, me of all people, saying close enough, close enough.
See, I would say to him, I wouldn't do it. I would probably just set those settings, in the theater or whatever cinema mode, and then warm 2 or whatever it is, and then I would take my whatever he's got his disc, right, and do your brightness, your contrast, and just walk away. And just say, you know what? They're going to come in here and they're going to make it a little bit better, but it's going to be, we're at 95 right now. Do I need to spend $350 or whatever it is to get the other 5%? I don't think so. But you can go to a number of websites and look for information. ISF, it's a calibration. THX offers calibrations training, so you can look at their website and figure out where they are. Who else?
Yeah, I will mention there is isfforum.com. Now, they are not officially part of the ISF, but they're a good resource because lots of ISF certified calibrators are part of the ISF forum, and there's a whole list, a very convenient list on the ISF forum, to which we will link over at avrant.com so that you can look up who's available in my area and contact them right there on the forum and get in touch with them that way. So it's a very convenient method of getting in touch. THX has their list of, THX certified installers, so you can just plug in your zip code and figure out who's around you there. I will mention one thing. Michael Chen, big friend of Ray Coronado's, has put together an excruciating test for anyone who thinks they know all about video calibration.
No one's going to pass that test. Let me just throw this out there. If you didn't just take the class, you're going to fail.
If you want to put your calibrator to death, if you're saying, hey,
if you want to get your 350 out of that guy, this is how you do it.
Spend $400. I want to make sure this guy knows everything there is about video calibration. Take him to this test. If he's willing to do it and passes, then you've got yourself a very good video calibrator, because it is a comprehensive. Just call
Michael Chen and make him.
Yeah, that's true.
He goes all around the world. He does. They do those trainings all over the place. And when he's in town, he does do calibrations. It probably costs more than $350 though. So probably $350 and some beer. I don't know. Oh, or Star Wars memorabilia. If I remember correctly, he's a huge Star Trek fan. Star Trek. Yep. Yes, he's not Star Wars. Star Trek.
He might be Star Wars. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. I'm agnostic when it comes to the Star series. I like them both. All right, Kari.
Karl.
Karl.
Karl. It's an L.
Is that really? Jesus, it looks like
you need glasses, Tom. You need glasses.
I do not need glasses. I just have my eyes checked, by the way, and
okay.
As a front projector, I wanted to add an over-the-air HD tuner. He does not need it to be a DVR. He just wants to be able to watch live broadcasts on his projector the same way he could if he connected an antenna to any regular HD TV. What do we suggest? Well, there's that Channel Master one that I've been looking at for a long time, but that's like $250, $300 on Amazon. And
it's a DVR. That's one reason why it costs that much.
But there's also the iHome. There's like a iHome or iView. It's like they're like twin.
iView.
Yeah. The ones, and those are cheaper. But they got like a really crappy remote and really crappy interface.
iView in particular, they have their 3500 STB, and they actually have an STB Mark II now, which has a better remote. So people have been saying, "Yay!" It's inexpensive. It's like $40.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not a super expense. It's only one tuner. You can actually turn it into a DVR. Funny enough, by adding a hard drive to it, it actually has that capability. It doesn't do it out of the box. You have to add a hard drive to it. But yeah, that's one way.
And if you've got an Xbox One, you can wait for that Hop Hog thing to come out, and then
that's true.
Get that.
Actually, that Hop Hog tuner is available now, except that the firmware update to make the Xbox One work with it in North America is not out yet.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that. When that happens, then I'm going to be be that.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be buying an Xbox One specifically to do that if you don't already own one, though.
No, it does look like it's going to be a very good solution.
But there's another one, which is Mohu. Now, we recommend Mohu all the time for their antennas because they make some great HDTV antennas. But they have another thing that they call Mohu channels, which is its own little box. I did not know
they had this. When did this happen? How long has this been around?
It's been around a little while.
It's like $100, though, right?
It's $100. But the reason it's more expensive is because it's not just a tuner. It also has a Wi-Fi connection and does a whole bunch of streaming services. So if you don't already have like a Roku or an Apple TV or a smart television to get those services, you can add streaming services and an over-the-air HDTV.
Will that work with like your remotes? Your universal remotes is
you can program Harmony to work with that, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll look into that.
It's a fun little solution. Mohu.
The thing that's always slowed me down about these solutions is the interface. A lot of times you're dealing with the channel guides will be horrible to navigate, very hard. It won't update, that sort of thing. So that's the thing that always concerns me. When you're dealing with Comcast or one of the big ones, they have their own, or even TiVo, they have their own interface, their own system for getting you what's going on and what channels are going on. So with these other ones, a lot of times they're all kind of going to the same sort of whatever free service there is out there that they grab it from, and it's not always as good as it should be. So that's the thing that always concerns me. But it looks like the Xbox One is going to be pretty good, and that's why
that one's going to be good. So that's that one. I'll just mention Ray got in touch with us while we were chatting and said over on Michael Chen's own website, he has a list of calibrators. So if you want to look up certified calibrators all in one place, we'll have the link for that posted at avrant.com as well.
All right, good. Who are we? I scrolled
forward. We're down to.
I was excited that was Akari for a while. I thought we had Akari, but now it's Karl. Kari.
Have you seen those llamas with hats, Karl?
I have not. Have you seen Kung Fury?
I have not watched it yet. No, I saw the link on Facebook.
All the awesome. It is all of the awesome. If you get through the first couple of seconds without it, it's not for work. What do they call it?
Yes.
NSFW or whatever it is.
Yeah, they're not safe for work. Yeah,
but it is definitely all of the awesome.
I did finish all of Daredevil on Netflix. That was great.
I really liked it.
I really liked it.
Yep. I thought it was good too. I thought that the second to last episode. Was just shut up and get over it so he can punch people in the face. Can we just get past this now? All right. Greg wanted to trigger his Elite Screens motorized screen to automatically roll down when he turns on his JVC RS46 front projector. Is a trigger cable just a 3.5 millimeter stereo cable? Not necessarily, but in your case, probably. Because I haven't looked at the projector, but a lot of them are.
Yeah, the stereo ones will probably work, but some don't. What will work all the time is a 3.5 millimeter male-to-male mono cable. Now, he was looking on Monoprice, of course, because when you want cheap cables, that's where I go. Usually no better place than Monoprice. Weirdly, Monoprice doesn't sell any 3.5 millimeter male-to-male mono cables. They only sell stereo, which is why he was asking. There's another place, mycablemart.com. They're another alternative for very inexpensive cables. They have mono 3.5 millimeter cables in all kinds of lengths. Over at Amazon, for some reason, even though it's Amazon, they only have like 3 and 6 foot lengths. So weird. But
these Elite screens too, they'll have IR receivers that you can use. You can actually use in conjunction with your projector. So when your projector turns on, it sends out a signal which tells the screen to go down. And vice versa. When you turn it off, it sends out a different signal, tells the screen to go up.
But the trigger thing is also fine. And these
it's better.
You can get like a 25 foot length for like $3 or something. You're not breaking the bank.
As long as you're not gonna break any decor laws by running it from the front of your room to the back of your room, or back of your room to the front of your room, then you should be fine.
Yeah, $2.84 for a 25 foot length. So even if it doesn't work, what are you out, right?
$2 and some, probably about $15 in shipping. Greg also wants to know, given the choice, will we choose to control our equipment using IP or IR? He's IP
Internet Protocol.
I know, but I thought it was RP was what he was asking.
RF,
RF
radio frequency. Yeah. No, IP, because a lot of things now you can plug them in via Ethernet and control them from, say, a web browser.
So he's deciding on the perfect remote, but he's still debating. I would choose RF. I want RF to be one of those options. Because RF is what I would choose. Because RF
well, it's just RF always has to be translated into something else, though.
I don't much care
itself.
Because IP, you know what, your network goes down, you can't control anything in your system. No, and IR, you have to always point stuff at things. That's not RF. RF is the way to go. Why are we even discussing this? This is clearly the way to go. Like my parents, who I love dearly, and have been using remotes since remotes were invented, still occasionally forget to point the remote at because you're looking at the remote and you want to know what you're doing, and then you forget to point it there. And then
hey man, we should go right back to the original clickers, where it was the actual snap sound that it was listening for. Let's go back to that. No, I know it ends up being kind of boring because whenever we talk remotes, we talk about Harmony remotes from Logitech. But honestly, what they're doing right now with their hub-based system, it's pretty much the best thing that's out there right now. And it honestly is. Nobody has more codes and supports more devices than Harmony. That's just a fact. And then the hub-based system, it works really well because the remotes, from the remote to the hub, is radio frequency, and then the hub can turn that command into Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, infrared. It just blasts them all out. So no matter what you've decided to control your actual individual devices with, that hub blasts out those signals. So I like it. That's what I'd recommend pretty easily.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and I just say unfortunately, there's just no competition for them right now. You know, Universal Remote has like their consumer level stuff, which is just your IR, put the code in yourself from the big list, you know, and try to program, you know, macros yourself on the remote itself, or they have their custom install stuff. There's nothing in between anymore for them, which makes them pretty much useless. The Control 4 and all these other guys, that's all custom install stuff, and it can be fantastic. Also very expensive. So there is no in between. I think a lot of people now are looking at the apps that you can put on your smartphone and do it that way. And that's sort of IP control because it's sending the commands by Wi-Fi first, and then there has to be some sort of little hub device that actually turns it into something your device can understand. Like, I don't mind those, but the thing is, Logitech has an app for your smartphone too, and you still just use their hub. So even there, I'm like, I'd still go Harmony. I really would. So I know why people sort of want to avoid it, which is that the Logitech Harmony setup software, it can be frustrating. There's no two ways about it. It can be frustrating. They try to make it very simple, which if that works for you, great. But then when you want to change some settings or do a really, you know, minuscule little adjustment, it can be a slog to work your way through their software to find that adjustment to make. But it can be done as long as you have the patience to do it. And everyone else's solutions aren't tremendously better anyway, or they don't support as many devices or do as many things. Frankly, after using Universal Remote's system, you know, before they took it away and just gave it to the custom installers, after using that, there is no amount of tedium that is involved with Harmony that in any way compares to the awfulness of what I had to do for Universal Remote to get there. I mean, it worked. There's no doubt about it. And there was a lot of control, but it was like programming DOS. I mean, it looked like it. It was just awful. It was really, really, really awful. And the Harmony is so much better. And frankly, I find that just about everything. The only problem I really have with my Harmony remote is about once or twice a month, it gets stuck. It just decides it's not gonna, you know, like last night, it was like, I'm done. So sometimes what I do is I'll plug it into my computer and sync it. And when I do that, it kind of resets the whole thing. Well, last night I found out that if you hold the off button for 15 seconds, that actually turns it off. I did not know that. Resets it. And I was very happy to learn that. And once I learned that, then everything was better. So it's not a perfect solution, but I guarantee you those Crestron ones aren't any more.
Yeah, I can mention now, you know, Logitech, they actually just recently released an update. If you have one of the hubs, even if it's one of the original hubs, they released a free software update for that adds support for a whole bunch of home automation devices. So now you've got your Hue lighting, your Lutron automated shades and Lutron lighting.
Yeah, I got that a while back. That's not new, is it?
Well, they had some support for individual devices, but they have added a whole bunch more. They've got some locks now and thermostats and all kinds of stuff. They added support for a whole bunch of stuff is the point.
Well, I'm going to have to maybe plug it in and see what's going on there.
Free
all right.
update.
How long has this podcast been going on? It feels like
a little over an hour.
All right. David has created a new bass head who is just 2 years old. He told us this on Facebook. He was playing a bass sweep on his new SVS PC12 Plus subwoofer with his AV receiver set to full reference volume because who needs Windows? The volume knob on the subwoofer itself was set too high, and he wound up startling his 2-year-old son who was in the room at the time. So clearly scarred for life. But no. Because later when he was using his PC, his son asked, "Bass sweep, daddy. Bass sweep, daddy." So to which I say, that boy's. I think I responded on Facebook. That boy's a keeper.
Yup. Which
is clearly true. Because my son at that age got his foot stuck in a subwoofer, and there's a picture to prove it. Not the best son. I'm sorry. He's a good son. He's not the best father because I had to stop and take the picture before I got his foot out of the subwoofer because that was worth it. But yes. So,
yeah, no. In my family, my sister, she has always hated anything loud. I mean, and not even loud, like just normal volume. She considers loud. Her daughter, though, my niece, she's always asking whatever they're watching. She's like, louder, louder, louder.
Clearly,
my niece and I get along. That's the end of that story.
All right, Sean has been an AV Rant listener since day one. He's read all of my books. Yay! At least somebody has. But this is his first time writing in. He is building his basement home theater. He's saving up some more funds before continuing. So right now he still has the walls and ceiling open, which means he has the perfect opportunity to second guess his own plans. There is a link to a website or something like that, and there's 91 pictures of his room. I think you can take less pictures of your room and more doing stuff with it.
Hey, pictures are cheap.
Yeah. Anyways, his room is approximately 11 feet by 20 by 8. And he has planned on the EMP Tech Impression Series speakers, 2 SVS PP2000 subs, and a 106-inch projection screen. He has not purchased any of those products yet, though he is still open to alternatives. All right, so A, or well, I guess before we do A, do we want to give him alternatives, or we're just okay with this?
I have no problem with any of those choices, so those all look great to me.
I don't know what your budget is, so I mean, I could, if you want to spend $10,000 on speakers, I could help you out. But if these are all within your budget, then you've chosen wisely, son.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
those PP2000s are gonna crush that room, though.
That is perfectly fine for that room size, no problem.
They will not be. You will have lots of headroom. We'll put it that way. Bass sweep, daddy. Should he run speaker wire for 5.2 or 7.2? Rob's going to say 7.2. I'm going to say 5.2 is okay. That's the answer to that question.
I got to say, your walls and ceiling are open. Speaker wire is cheap. Why the heck not?
I did, and I'm still not using them. That's all I got to say about that.
Yep. No, you don't have to use them, but you may as well run them when the walls are open. That's my opinion. I mean, 20 feet is long enough. He's only planning one row of seats that is well away from the back wall. So 20 feet is a large enough room from front to back that, surround backs are not completely useless or actually detrimental. They'd be fine.
I bet you'll be just fine with 5. Where should he leave speaker wire in the ceiling for future height channels? It would be nice to be able to just drill into the ceiling and have the speaker wire ready to go when/if he adds these. That's a good question, buddy. Because we don't know. Well, I mean, we know where you can put them now.
Yeah.
But who knows what'll be the preferred location in the future?
Well, I don't think we're changing very much from the Dolby Atmos recommendations, to be honest with you.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, you might get one of those receivers that, like, you can have this and this or this and this, but not any combination.
Well, why not do all 10? The walls and ceilings are open.
It's not free. Speaker wire is not free. Let's just start with that.
It's 50 cents a foot.
That's still not clearly not free. And you're going to have him buying hundreds and hundreds of feet.
Judging by his pictures, he already has thousands of feet of speaker. He had 3 boxes of speaker wire.
He's got a ridiculous amount of speaker wire.
I don't think it's a problem. I mean, I'm not even joking. go ahead and wire for all 10, because why not?
Whatever, go with that.
Yeah, and if you only want to wire for 4, my suggestion would be wire for front heights, because even though Dolby Atmos, Dolby recommends you have top fronts and top rears, that's their #1 preferred setup. There's no denying that the front height speakers, which go on the front wall, so basically in the edge where the front wall meets the ceiling, directly above your front left and right speakers, that's where the front height speakers go, anywhere between 30 degrees elevation and 45 degrees elevation. But so many formats make use of those speaker positions that, to me, it's like, if you're going to put heights anywhere, that's where I put them, because every format, not just Dolby Atmos, uses those positions. Then the other two, personally, I would do them as top middles, because I think having the speakers directly overhead is more noticeable than having them in front of you or behind you, because you're already going to have the front heights. So I'd put them directly overhead or maybe slightly behind you. So if you're only going to do 4, that's why I put them. But otherwise, I'd wire for all 10.
Yeah, you see, I think I would put them directly overhead or slightly in front. That's
it's just you can't set up front heights and top front. Nobody's giving you the option. No. So you'd have to call them top middles anyway.
Yeah. He's planning on putting in both subwoofers at the front of the room. How bad would that actually be? Not great. Is there
not what we recommend, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about where to put subwoofers for what, months now, and never once have we said, well, front of the room's not so bad.
I see very little reason in all the pictures and diagrams he sent why he could not do the front right corner of his room and the rear left corner of his room. Or
symmetry.
Yeah, visual symmetry. Well, get 4 subs then, man. Get 4 subs and put 2 in the front and 2 in the back. Boom.
I like the way that sounds. Get yourself some SVS PB1000s. All right.
True. Yeah, 4 of them.
Put them in all 4 corners. That's symmetry. Yeah, don't put them both of them up front. You could do whatever you want.
Yes.
You're asking our opinion, and our opinion is you're going to put them both up front, and you're going to say, my bass sounds weird. How do I fix it? And we're going to say, don't put them up front. And you're going to say, but they're already there. I wired from them, blah, blah, blah. That's where the wife wants them, blah, blah, blah. Don't put them up front, and you'll be fine. Or put them up front and deal with the issues. And there's going to be lots of them, because that's just the way it goes. There are 8-inch HVAC ducts in the walls and ceiling of his room. Should he swap these out for flex duct or wrap them in Dynamat? He's not constructing this room to be soundproof, but he doesn't want there to be unnecessary. It doesn't want it to be unnecessarily noisy if there's something easy that can be done. That's more of a you question.
If you're talking, because he was mentioning that some of these ducts, they're not just feeding that theater room, they're feeding like rooms upstairs or adjacent rooms or something like that. I would not switch those to flex duct. Anything that's going to a different room, I wouldn't do that, which means there's not much point in switching these to flex duct. You could do Dynamat, but like I just mentioned, Dynamat stuff is not cheap. It's effective, but it's not cheap. Honestly, what I do here, because he's saying like this room is, he's not building it to be soundproof to begin with. So your HVAC isn't going to be the thing that makes or breaks this. I would suggest you just do normal insulation wrap, because that's a good idea for your HVAC ducts anyway. I'd seal them up. I'd get the aluminum tape, seal up all the joints. You can even put on that gray paste-like stuff that completely seals up all the points where the duct, joins another piece of duct. You can do that so you have, really good airflow. That's a great thing for your house anyway. And then just put the regular insul wrap around it. That's the insulation that has sort of aluminum foil around the outside that they use to just insulate ducts. That's enough, because that's going to muffle the sound just a little bit. It's not like super effective, but it's
I wonder if he's. I don't think that. Maybe I'm reading this question differently than you, but I think he's more worried about the sound coming in from the HVAC than he is about sound getting out to the rest of the house.
That could be. Yeah.
If that's the case, then what you want to do is make sure you have a couple of turns beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, you could run the last bit of the duct that actually feeds air into the theater. That you could transition to flex duct. That'd be fine.
I think that's what he's asking.
Yeah. But
because he just doesn't want his HVAC to be noisy every time it kicks on.
That could be.
It. I mean, I've got a huge bulkhead behind me, right? It's got 2 vents in there, and all I did is open them up wide, because if you close them up, they whistle. Yeah. But you open them up and they don't. Does that let sound out? I don't freaking care. I'm not the one trying to sleep. So what do I care?
Yeah. So yeah, for the opening that's actually going into your theater, if you can sort of decouple that from a solid pipe in some way, which just means transitioning to flex duct and having a wider opening, then great. But yeah, for the rest of it, all I would do is the insulation, the actual duct insulation, because that's a good idea anyway, and it muffles the sound a little.
Lastly, what else will we change? You mean other than not putting both your subs up front? Yeah.
I was looking at his pictures. I don't know what's happening at the top of his stairs, but at the bottom of his stairs, there's no door.
All right. Yeah.
So if that stairway is just completely open, I'd try to put a door either at the top or the bottom, so you seal in that a bit, because he's got doors everywhere else in his room.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You can close those doors when you're listening to stuff.
What's a basement, right? Didn't he say it's a basement? It's got to have a door at the top. If it's got to have a door.
I would assume.
Yeah.
In which case, you're fine. You might want to
have insulation in the walls and the ceiling. He'll have carpet and DIY acoustic panels. Hopefully, you'll be doing those ones from what's his name?
From Rob W. Yeah,
man, I gotta do those.
He's doing this work himself, so he's not afraid of putting together some acoustic panels. So yeah, check out that information we have from Rob W. because those were awesome.
Other than that, no. Sounds pretty good overall, dude. I think you got to get away from this idea of having both those subs up front. I think that's a hold off for how you think theaters should look because of how they've looked for a really long time. You're gonna get black subs. You can put them in your corners and not worry about it, and then you'll be okay. The rest of it sounds pretty good to me. Thick pad on your carpet. It's not necessarily a bad idea for a number of reasons. It's more comfortable too.
I don't totally know what his plans were for where he's putting his projector.
That's true.
So, but I'm assuming it's going to be in the room somewhere. So Tom's suggestion of a hush box, not a bad idea.
Yeah, hush boxes are always nice.
That might be one thing to add that I didn't see mentioned.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. Infinite Gary. All right, now we have Infinite Gary. After our comments last week, Gary went to clarify that his theater was first planned and built using just the two Dynaudio subwoofers. ARC, which is Anthem Room Correction, was run, and the target was linear, even bass, using just those two. Gary then decided to add the Infinite Baffle sub for more oomph when watching movies, but he had never desired more oomph when playing music, so the original ARC settings with just the two Dynaudio subs were left alone, and a second ARC setup was done to the Infinite Baffle subwoofer and now added to the system. Gary pointed out the subwoofer output level was lowered by 3 dB in the ARC settings after an Infinite Baffle sub was added.
Makes sense.
So Gary was wondering if you had any comments regarding all of that. Yes, I still don't agree that you should not have your Infinite Baffle sub on during music. No matter what your initial intent was or how this stuff happened, you don't turn off a sub. It's against the rules, Gary. You should know that. I am never going to agree with, well, I'm just going to turn this one off. Stop turning speakers off in my...
My take on it, first of all, the 3 dB drop is exactly what you would expect.
Yeah, that's exactly
when you add another subwoofer, you get 3 dB more output, so it would turn it 3 dB down to compensate for that. That's what ARC would do. But the thing was, the Infinite Baffle sub was not installed in Gary's room for the purpose of evening out the bass. Because it was installed up at the front of the room where his Dynaudio sub is also up the front of the room. So it was not installed to take care of standing waves or to even out the bass. Now, Gary does only really have one seat, so it doesn't completely matter if it's even across his whole room because he only cares about that one seat. But it was this thinking that the Infinite Baffle sub is somehow its own separate entity that doesn't interact with all the other sound waves going on and just does its thing independent of itself. And it doesn't. It
clearly doesn't, because if it did, you would not have that 3 dB increase in sound. If an Infinite Baffle sub was just add oomph, then it should be playing from 20 hertz down.
Right? Yeah. Or wherever the minus 3 dB point of the other two subs is, if they don't reach all the way to 20. Turning it into a 4 or 5 way system. Yeah. So we got to get away from this thinking that the component works independent of the rest of the system, because Gary's not the only person who thinks that way. There's plenty of people who still think full range speakers, right?
Yeah.
So
Lee being one of them.
he's moving away from it. He's slowly being turned.
All we got to do is convince his wife, and he'll be turned right away. All right. Gary was also wondered, with Anthem's new AVM60 processor announced with support for Dolby Atmos and DTS-X, when ARC is run, will the microphone need to be aimed or placed for each ceiling quadrant for the overhead speakers? If the in-ceiling speakers aren't aimed at the listening position, just firing straight down, isn't it possible that moving the microphone to all of the different measurement positions could result in some wacky EQ settings? You're never going to have to point those omnidirectional mics, dude. Yeah. So you never have to point those anyways. And the whole idea of moving the mic around is to get an idea of what's going on in all those different seats. So if one seat's closer to the overhead speaker, well, then of course it's going to be a little bit louder, and the room correction should take that into account.
Yeah, another thing to know is that pretty much all of these room correction systems, they rarely touch above 8 kilohertz. Some of them don't go above 4 kilohertz because those frequencies are so directional that, just slightly towing in the speaker differently or something would completely alter the measurements. So they tend not to touch the really high super directional frequencies. On top of that, the curve that Dolby Atmos recommends for those speakers, because your room correction system, it's just saying, all right, how do I EQ to make this more or less a flat and linear frequency response? But then when you activate the Atmos or the DTS-X listening mode, it goes, okay, you have height speakers or top speakers, and it applies its own curve to those. So there's quite a bit of correction going on here. Regardless of all of that, the microphones always just point straight up. They always just point straight up. You're not wrong that when you have straight down firing in-ceiling speakers and you're moving the mic around to different positions, that the high frequencies might measure differently in each of those positions. You're not totally wrong about that, but for the most part, room correction systems ignore those high frequencies anyway. So it's pretty much focusing on the mid-range as far as the room correction goes.
Yeah. All right. Gary is playing with the settings on this Anthem D2 processor. He has tried the analog direct and analog DSP modes for 2-channel music. He kind of likes the analog DSP mode and thinks it enhances the sound, but what is it actually doing? I don't know. What's it doing, Rob? I'm not looking this stuff up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so analog direct. Yeah, analog direct on 2-channel means whatever's coming out of your 2-channel source, your CD player, your vinyl, whatever it might be, that's coming out of the player, and it ain't doing nothing to it. It's like, there you go. There's some 2-channel. I'm going to play some 2-channel now. It might do your basic crossover so that you can have your subwoofers active. But that's about it. That's all it's doing to it. The analog DSP mode, it's not like Yamaha's DSP mode where it's turning it into church or, jazz hall or rock concert or something like that. It means it's applying all of the digital signal processing that this thing can do. That's including your ARC, that's including your bass management, that's including your tone controls, it's including the EQ settings that you adjusted manually, all of that stuff. So if you have these nice ARC settings that you've gone to the work, your audio calibrator has already done that, it's not surprising that you like the analog DSP mode, because then it's all active. So yeah, as long as you're not turning it to some weird listening mode.
Rare times when I read the names of the stuff, I'm like, that sounds like this sounds like this, but I'm not going to guess that that's what it is, because it's usually something completely different because engineering.
Yeah.
But yeah, those sound exactly the way that they actually are.
Yeah, Anthem's pretty good about that. Anthem's not too confusing. They pretty much say what they mean. So yeah, the analog direct, you're kind of doing away with all of the calibration that you did, which shouldn't sound as good if we're correct about all this stuff. Yeah.
No matter how many times people say that you should listen, pure direct for 2-channel listening.
Well, because they give you that analog direct mode because there are the people who believe stalwartly that when they're listening to 2-channel, they don't want any digital interference of any kind. And all the processing, your bass management, your room correction, anything is being done digitally, which means it's taking your analog 2-channel source, converting it to digital, doing its processing, then converting it back into analog. That's how all that stuff gets done. That's how the outboard Dirac boxes from Mini DSP, they take the analog output that would normally just go straight to your amplifier, they put it into a little box, turn it into digital, process it, turn it back into analog, and set it onto the amplifier. So they're the people who are like, no, never let my pure analog sources become digital. So that's why Anthem gives you that analog direct option, but then you're losing all the processing.
Or as I like to call it, throwing money away. Because why would you buy all that stuff if you weren't going to use it?
Unless you suddenly moved to a room with no walls and ceiling, there is, because that's what all the processing is there to compensate for your room, not for your speakers, not for the source, for your room. So unless you moved your room out of the equation, you want the processing.
On the video side, he says a crosshatch pattern was used to adjust the sharpness setting on his projector. He has noticed on other projectors, though, that even after the setup and panel alignment, sometimes they look a little edgy. Is that due to sharpness being set too high? That's such a general question I can't answer it, really. I mean, it could be. It could also be that they have some sort of other processing going on, like they've got edge enhancement turned on, or someone's got it in torch mode still, or something like that. It could be.
Even
could just be a crappy projector.
Even the high frame rate things sometimes.
Yeah, the 240 hertz processing and that sort of stuff. Yeah, a lot of that stuff can do that. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's very common. I mean, for example, the Panasonic projectors, they actually put a thing right into their lens to blur the image a little bit so that you wouldn't see any screen door effect. And then sometimes people were like, oh, that's a little bit blurry. So then they kind of put a sharpener, like not just regular sharpness, but like an enhancer, you know, an edge enhancement thing, or something like Darby could do that.
Yeah, right? I was going to say Darby, right? And there's that mosquito processing, which all does the same sort of stuff.
Yeah, noise reduction is another possible culprit for causing that effect. So yeah, I wouldn't immediately say it's just the sharpness control being set incorrectly, because usually the default is fine.
Yeah.
Usually if you don't touch sharpness out of the box, it's already fine. There's a
or turn it to 0
reasons.
Let's just turn it all the way down. You're fine.
Yeah.
Finally, just wanted to share a video. We mentioned Dolby Cinema last week, in which they use Christie digital laser projectors to deliver high dynamic range in 3D that uses 6 primaries. This video describes Barco's, I don't know who that is, similar projection solution. And it's making Gary want to buy one, so we'll share that.
Do you have several $100,000, Gary? Obviously, Gary has some money. He's spent good money on his system, but I don't think he has several $100,000 for a projector, because that's what these Barcos cost. Barco is talking about how they have projectors like Christie's. The laser light engine is outside of the projector. It's in a separate box that can be separately cooled, even in a separate room, and then they use fiber optic cables to feed the light into the projector. That's how Christie does it. Barco can actually put the laser light engine inside of the projector, and they can also use one projector instead of 2 and still get similar light output because the light engine is inside the projector. So Barco's like, our solution is better, but then you have to cool it like crazy. Like crazy. You have to cool it. So.
That sounds really convenient. Yeah. Yes, I'm going to sign me up for one of those right after Never. All right, John. How much? I just switched off the stupid topic list. Hold on. I got to scroll.
Oh, I want to talk about this one. Yeah, this is an interesting one, which I'm really glad John got in touch, because I didn't know about this one. Didn't know about it.
I've never heard of this. So, like I said, I didn't get this far down the list because I didn't think we were going to get this far. John added ReplayGain metadata to his music files using the Fubar 2000 player. He's wondering if this will allow him to now use Odyssey Dynamic EQ with no offset. Previously, he was using an offset of 10 dB for Dynamic EQ for his music files. I have no idea what any of that means.
So ReplayGain, it's an interesting thing. I had to look this up on Wikipedia and their own wiki that they have for it, but it was more or less a proposed standard for allowing, you could actually choose whether it was just within a single track, whether it was within an entire album, or whether it was across all music files that you own. And what it does is it analyzes how loud it is, and then tries to normalize that. Now, if you do it just within a track, of course, you're dynamically compressing it, essentially, and making the entire thing the same volume. If you do it across an album, it just means that from song to song, they won't be
iTunes does that, though, doesn't it? iTunes does it, like, automatically.
Soundcheck, iTunes Soundcheck. But the difference is that Soundcheck doesn't necessarily target the same normal reference volume level all the time. It just tries to even everything out. Whereas ReplayGain specifically targeted, I don't know why they chose 89 dB as the average, but they chose 89 dB as the average. Now that's in the wiki. They said originally they chose the SMPTE standard, which is the same as movies, of 85 dB. That's what they originally chose, and it'd be like that would be a good choice. That's what everything else, as far as movies and TV content, that's reference volume, but they chose 89. So there it is.
And now they're 4 dB louder, and people are going to think they're better because of it.
That might have something to do with it.
So does that mean he doesn't have to use his 10 dB offset for dynamic? I don't know.
I'd use the 5. I'd use the 5 dB offset because Odyssey Dynamic EQ offers a 5 dB, a 10 dB, and a 15 dB offset.
Which I've never adjusted that. What's the default?
The default is 0.
Oh, there you go. That's what I got.
The 0 dB offset is for the movie and television standard. 85 dB average with 105 dB peaks. Music can be louder than that. Music can have 120 decibel peaks. And since everything is being dynamically compressed these days, often that's where everything is playing, or within like 3 dB of 120. That's the full scale for music. So that's why they offer that 15 dB offset, because if everything's playing at 120, that brings you back down to 105, right? But a lot of music is mixed at higher, or mastered at higher levels than it is for movies. So with this ReplayGain now bringing everything down to an 89 dB average, it still allows for peaks. It's not as though it completely eliminates all the dynamics itself, as long as you've said, hey, normalize things across my entire library, not just an individual track. But 89 dB, that's close enough to a 5 dB offset that's what I'd use. It's louder than your movies and music, or movies and TV. But it's not drastically louder anymore. So, yeah.
There you go.
That's where I'd go.
All right, this is the last one we're going to do because I'm fading. Okay. Mike has been looking for subwoofer cables for his pair of SVS SB2000 subs, and it has caused him some confusion. He was looking on Milo Price, and he came up with the following questions. Number 1, RG6 versus RG59. What are those? And what are the pros and cons of each? My experience has been RG6 tends to be stiffer and harder to work with, and RG59 is a little bit more supple, generally speaking. And it probably has to do with, it's probably solid core versus stranded would be my guess.
It very often is, I mean, purely technically, it's referring to the gauge of the conductor that runs down the middle of the wire. These are in reference to coaxial cables. That's where you have a signal lead that goes right down the middle. Dielectric, a non-conductive material is wrapped around that, and then there's a shield around the outside of it. And that's your standard cable. That's your F-type cable that you use to connect your wall to your tuner. That's any RCA cable. Those are all coaxial cables. There's a lead down the middle, and then a dielectric, and then a shield.
Those red, white, and yellow cables, those are all the same thing.
Yep. So RG6 has a thicker conductor that goes down the middle. It is very often solid. And RG59 is a thinner conductor, and it is very often stranded. So one of them, technically, if you're doing really long distances, you'd want to use RG6 because it's the more robust, thicker cable. RG59 for pretty much everything you're going to do inside your theater is fine and way easier to work with.
Yeah. Monoprice offers 75 ohm coaxial audio video cable that they say is for SPDIF, SPDIF, digital coax, subwoofer, and composite video. On other sites, he's seen subwoofer cables all in their own completely separate section. Is there really nothing special about a subwoofer cable? Is it really exactly the same as a digital coax or composite video cable? Yes.
Yep.
It's the same dang thing. And giving it its own little name and charging you more is disingenuous. That being said, long runs of these things, you do not want to have the thinnest, least shielded cable in the history of the world. So a lot of times, I've been saying this for 8 years now. Like if you're like at a short run and you've got a red, yellow, and like a red, white, and yellow cable that comes all together, you will often notice that the yellow cable is a little bit thicker than the red and the white. That's because it's got better shielding on it, because it's the video cable and it's more susceptible. You rip that one off, you can use that one just fine. That's what I would use. The other two are trash anyways. Trash. Complete garbage.
I'll answer this in the next one, but The subwoofer cables are not special. You can use a subwoofer cable for other purposes, and you can use other cables as a subwoofer cable, and it will all just work fine. They are not a special, completely different, just because they're color-coded purple, perhaps, doesn't make any difference. It is a coaxial cable with RCA plugs on either end. That's what it is.
So we already answered D, which is, could he use component video, red, green, blue cables that he already has lying around? Answer is yes. Those are all usually very well shielded. Those would be just fine.
But there is one little difference, and that's going to be C.
Yeah, we're going to get back to that. And are these monoprice cables okay? There's some other brand we'd recommend more highly. Monoprice is fine.
They are fine.
Belden Blue Jeans cables will give you the best quality for sure. You're getting great quality from Blue Jeans. Not a problem there. I actually read a comment in something. Why would you want to have a cable that was wrapped in denim? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, you're a freaking idiot. That's all I wanted to type over and over again. Just like The Shining. All work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to write for like pages and pages and pages of. You should not exist. You have to think about your life and what's going on with it.
That's like one of those commenters who comments just on the headline of an article and clearly has not read any part of the article whatsoever. Yeah.
Anyways, let's go back to C. I know you guys can't see any of this, but anyways, this is the middle question. What is the 75 ohm all about, and what does that mean, and is it important, Rob?
So the 75 ohm rating is important for the video side of things. The impedance of that cable comes from the specific distance between the conductor and the shield and the specific ratio of the length of the RCA cable. Now, interestingly, in order to be an RCA cable, it cannot have a 75 ohm impedance. They messed up. They really should not have used an RCA plug for video because it cannot carry a 75 ohm impedance just because of the dimensions of the cable, of the plug itself. But that's where the importance come in. Video is being transmitted at a very high frequency. It's in the megahertz. It's not in the kilohertz or single hertz the way audio is. So the original RCA plug was an audio connection. And there, the impedance of the cable doesn't really matter. That's why when you have the red, white, yellow, and the yellow one is thicker, and the red, white ones are really, really super skinny, those red and white ones won't have a 75 ohm impedance. They'll have some other impedance. But for audio, it doesn't matter. It totally doesn't matter. It's really low frequencies going across those cables. It just won't matter. But the video one should try to be close to that 75 ohm standard. You can introduce interference if the impedance mismatch is way off. So if you use super skinny little coaxial cables to try and send video, you might run into problems, but you won't on the audio side. So going from a video cable and using it for audio, totally fine. But using an audio cable for video, not always totally fine. Some of them are, but not always.
Okay. Was that it?
I think that's it for that one.
All right. Was that Mike?
So many questions left.
We don't have that many. All right. So we've got Andrew 2, T-U-E.
2A. I believe it's 2A.
2A. All right.
I think so, yeah.
Mike, Andy, Barney, and Eric. And it looks like maybe Alan and James. And I don't know, maybe that. Mike's that one from Mike has already been answered.
Look at how many we have left. I told you.
Well, the last three I just mentioned came in during the podcast. So yeah, not so worried about those. But you guys will get your questions answered soon. If you didn't hear your name or you're concerned that maybe we skipped your question because we don't like you, that's not the case. Might be the case, but it might be the case we don't like you. But we didn't skip your question.
God. Tom wouldn't even know if he liked you or not because he hasn't read down that far in the list.
I have not read that far in the list.
But that's my fault. I'm there's so much stuff going on. I'm not getting these topic lists to him in a timely fashion. So
that's part of it. But the other part of it is that I came home early from work specifically to because I was like, I'm no longer gonna let Rob answer all the technical stuff because I'm just like slacking off. I'm gonna get through here. First of all, I got stuck on that stupid trying to find that height subwoofer thing. Second, I came home. I was like, my fence was starting to fall down. So I went outside to go fix the fence. I was like, oh, it'll take a half an hour. 2 hours later, I'm late to bring the kids to martial arts. I haven't eaten dinner. I didn't eat till 9 o'clock, like right before the podcast I was eating. It's just, I can't catch a break. So whatever. Yes, guys, we will get your questions answered. Don't worry. We love you all. Please send all your questions to us. You can email rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com, www.avrant.com, where you can also leave us a donation if you so choose. Facebook.com/avrant podcast. We would love to hear your thoughts on this whole SVS and just in general advertisers and supporters of the podcast in that way. Simply because I want to make sure that I'm giving you the best possible advice that you can trust. Not so much that I don't want to make money, but I would love to give you the advice that you can trust. And there's plenty, I mean, radio stations, they are like, yeah, you should only use this product, you know, that are completely an advertiser on here. And no one seems to have any problem with it. But for some reason, in the world of AV, God help you if you're anything other than Consumer Reports. And frankly, I don't know how unbiased they are. So there you go. Let's go back to our listeners of the week, who we will thank as I scroll way the heck back up here. We will thank Scott, Gary, Alan, Tim, and Eric for supporting the podcast in their own ways. We appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Very much appreciated.
All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Mantry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Okay, guys. The after party will start at soon-ish.